All right, we are live. Welcome to Detroit Church's session on foster care and orphan care, solving the orphan care crisis. Bernita Bradley is going to be our host tonight, so you can take it away, Bernita.
Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining us again, like Lindsay said. So first want to give a shout out to our wonderful pastor and first lady for this opportunity to share with the world one of the missions that our church has around foster care and adoption for our children in the community. And say hello to Stephen and Hannah, Sherman and Sampanguida, and Kristen. And just thank you all for joining us. They all come from different walks of life, and I'll give them opportunity to present themselves, but all of them are heavy into the foster care for children. And thank you again to Lindsay for even having the passion to do this. We do have a couple other people who were not able to be here. Chrissy, unfortunately, is not able to be here, but she's in our prayers, right? So we'll move on. We may have another guest joining us
Erica.
a little bit later. Erica's
not able. Hang on, I'm going to show a picture of her cute self.
Okay.
And her little baby. So this is Nathan. He unfortunately got a little dehydrated today and had to go to the emergency room. But Erica was able to adopt Nathan through a private adoption through Bethany Christian Services a couple of years ago. And he is a happy little man. So yeah, we're praying for them tonight as they're at the emergency room. But he's doing okay from what I hear. They're just getting him rehydrated. So
yes. And so I guess I want to start with a brief introduction of myself. So I've been a part of foster care system over 4 generations of my family. My mother was a foster child because her mother died at the age of 13. That in turn made my brother be born into foster care because my mother was underage. And back then foster care was different. This was in the 60s, right? Foster care was totally different. If a foster child had a child, their child was automatically a foster child. So he was automatically taken from my mother. My mother was able to get him back. In turn, so many of my nieces and nephews have been in foster care system. I, in turn, end up actually kidnapping my nieces and nephews from foster care at a certain age and didn't get in much trouble. I would not recommend that to anybody right now because that was probably about 11 years ago, but I was able to keep them. And my first actual foster child was actually when I was 22. And so that was well before my nieces and nephews. I ended up taking in a young teenager. And so I'm very passionate about this, and I'm very passionate about making sure families stay connected, but making sure there are places if people need foster care, safe homes, safe families who are trained and who are able to take care of children. We want you to know ways that you can take care of children that you may not even think about it, right? A lot of people may have challenges to say, how can I do this? How do I do this? I don't have whatever I need. But with that being said, I'd love to go into Stephanie and Hannah in no particular order. They're just next to me on the screen. So tell us a little bit about yourself, please.
You always go first.
Okay. So Stephen and I are newer to Detroit. We moved here 2 years ago. Stephen is a resident in emergency medicine doctor at Sinai Grace Hospital. And I work in socially responsible investing from home. And we have been foster parents for the last 6 months. We have a 10-year-old foster daughter, and we got licensed through Samaritas Foster Agency, and can share more about kind of calling or why we got into foster care, but I guess
I would say that fostering was definitely not on our radar. It was something that very much we felt God led us down into it for different reasons, and that, maybe we'll get into it, but just, if you spend any time in Detroit or the Wayne County, just the need is there. And I think that alone is compelling enough, but it's been anyway, we'll get all into it.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. And you said a 10-year-old, right? That you have a 10-year-old. Okay, so let's go to Kristen next. Kristen Adams. Christine or Kristen? Forgive me if I'm pronouncing it wrong.
Kristen's fine. So I also had some, when I was a kid, foster care was called on our family. And so I had that experience, and what I was told was, you know, you're going to be taken from your mom, and that terrified me. So I just lied. We weren't taken, but so kind of throughout growing up, that was kind of always there in the background, that was an option, because it would happen more than once. But when I got saved at the age of 22, when I came to Christ, and I was reading the Bible, it just seemed very clear that it was our responsibility to take care of orphans. I didn't know anybody who did foster care. I hadn't really heard much about it, but I just took the Bible at its word and thought, that's my responsibility now. I need to do something about it. So immediately after we got married, my husband and I, we started looking into it. And then we had 4 kids. And then we revisited after our youngest was, 3 or 4. And so we got licensed a couple years later, and we've been fostering ever since. We haven't stopped since we started. So.
Wow. Good. So the Joneses.
All right. So again, Sherman and Sabagita, and our I guess journey into fostering and things like that is kind of in between our other panel counterparts. So we have got involved firstly through Safe Families in Chicago, and we can go to a little bit more information about that later on. But Safe Families, it's just a way for people to not actually have their child or children move into foster care, but they can have a temporary spot for, if they need to get on their feet. So we first got involved during that with a number of different families and moms and dads and things like that. And then we actually, a neighbor of ours actually needed some help. So we have guardianship of a 4-year-old. That's been, has it been 2 years?
3 years.
Yeah, almost 3 years now. So 2.5 years now. And yeah, so he lives here with us. A lot of you all obviously know him, but but yeah, that's what we got involved, and it was more so just about Chrissy already mentioned it, but just trying to take care of the need that that was presented, and that's apparent, but not really a lot of awareness is built around it. So, but that's what we decided to do. So I don't know if you wanted to add anything else about it.
Well, I too work in the foster care space, so I help youth that are transitioning out of care with workforce development, career development, post-secondary education, and so on. So not only are we living it at home, but it's also something that we are very passionately focused on when it comes to our professions as well.
Cool. We're gonna come back to that aftercare, because that's a very important piece. So now I'd really like to say welcome to Ms. Miller. She is from Bethany Christian Services, which is a foster care agency that helps families even get prepared for it, supports children in the transition. And so go ahead, introduce yourself and let us know what you do.
Okay. Hi, everyone. First of all, I'm so happy to be a part of this live panel discussion. Very important topic, because we have so many children who are in need of families. They need to be embraced, especially at this time. So I'm very happy that we're doing it. My name is Missy Parker Miller. I am a recruitment specialist with Bethany Christian Services. So I do a lot, because Bethany is a Christian agency. We do a lot of our recruitment from churches. So I have the joy of going into churches, meeting with pastors, sharing with them the ministry, because we do view this as a ministry, and sharing With them, again, in Michigan, we've got over 13,000 children who are in foster care. And we get calls every day, like at least 15 placement calls a day for children to come into care, but our homes are full. We're always in need of more foster homes. And so, unfortunately, with COVID-19, church services haven't been meeting as they normally would. And so I'm looking forward to, I know my church just opened up last Sunday, having face-to-face meetings again. And so I'm looking forward to hopefully being able to start back going into churches and sharing the need that exists for more Christian foster homes. Also, I am a foster and adoptive parent. My husband and I fostered for 10 years, and we adopted 4 of our foster children. We had 3 birth children at the time. They were 7, 4, and 1 when we began fostering. And we fostered probably over 35, 40 kids during the 10 years. And as I said, we adopted 4 of those. And so for me, this isn't just a job. I love working with Bethany and the work that we do. But I think, like the Jones just said, this is very personal to me, very passionate about it. And I just want our children to be, I just want them to be loved. I just want them to be nurtured. And so many children are missing out on that and kind of just having to raise themselves. And that should not be. A child should be able to enjoy their childhood and to have stability and to know that someone really cares about them. So as I said, I'm very grateful to Detroit Church and the work that they're doing with fostering, and hoping that even through this meeting tonight, more families will learn that this is something you can do. Don't be scared to be a foster parent, because you can make such a difference in the life of a child. So I'll stop there. I don't know.
Bernita, did we lose you?
I think she's trying to reconnect.
Trying to reconnect?
Mhm.
All right, let me just, oh, there you are.
I'm back.
Oh, no.
Yes, lights going in and out, our lights and shut off here.
Sorry, sweetie,
It's
we
power
cannot-
outages over this way, so we'll hear you. But for all that, I go back to can you hear me now?
We can hear you now. You might need to start over though.
You sound like you belonged in the Transformer.
So our lights and things are trying to go out. I'm like wonk, 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 like I'm about to transform. Our lights and stuff are messing. Give me. Once in a few minutes, I may join by phone and come off of this. But anyway, I wanted to go to Stephen and Hannah, because you were talking about like you never intended on going into foster care. Why and how did you get into foster care?
Yeah. Okay.
So, we're not from Michigan. We're not from Detroit. So we're kind of outsiders that moved here, right, about 2 years ago now. And, I think that just realizing the need between, there was her experiences she had out in the community as well. And then just what I would see every day, even just in the ER at Sinai Grace, you see kids that it's just like, there's just need a safe space. And I really like the way you put it, Kristen, just like, there's a lot of things God doesn't, people ask like, oh, what does God want me to do with my life? And it's like, there's some things that we know what he wants you to do, right? Like he wants you to take care of the widows and he wants you to take care of the orphans. It's just, I think it happens that we live in a place where it's like, this is one of the major issues for Detroit, right? Other parts around the world that's having orphans, maybe there isn't even an orphan to take care of. I think, orphan or just child. I think when we sort of realized, we were super busy, but we have space, and we can provide a safe space. for a kid or for a family. It was like, how can we not do this? That's kind of where we came from. And then when we prayed a lot about it, we kind of jumped into it, and it wasn't something that we were like, we're going to go in and foster or adopt right off the bat. It's been an awesome experience. It's changed us for sure. But
yeah, I would say Stephen and I have had conversations since the beginning of our relationship saying at some point we would like to foster adopt, which is I think where a lot of couples are like, oh, someday I'll foster and adopt, right? And certainly like this season is probably one of the busiest seasons of our lives professionally. I mean, Stephen works at times 80 hours a week. I consistently work over 50 hours a week. And so a lot of people from the outside would say, it does not make sense for you to take on, we also don't have any biological kids, so we don't have like prior experience to parenting. A lot of people outside would say it doesn't make any sense for you to take on foster care and parenting in like the busiest professional season of your lives. And if you'd asked us with kind of human eyes, we probably would have said the same thing, which is why we're like, oh, we're going to wait and someday do this when we have, time or space or financial stability that has like extra budget or, whatever the things are that people say they're going to wait on to do it. And really it was just God coming in and speaking to each of us individually, like, I want you to do this now. I don't want you to wait. And it happened for Stephen independently through his experiences in the ED. I mean, what would you say, like, consistently, like what percentage of days or what percentage of patients would you say you see?
Well, I think just more like you're saying, like it's a generational thing. You see adults, or it's like, if they probably would have had a safer space or an actual childhood to not have the trauma exposed to them, then they probably would not have a lot of the problems that they're dealing with now. Or it's like, it's not just a child, in the moment thing.
And it's one of those things of, once you know, you can't unknow, right?
Yeah. It's
once you know that there's a need, it's like, how do you walk around and you have even if you got a little space to fulfill that need, that you can fill it, right? Kristen, so when you think about your childhood, you said it impacted you for foster care, to raise children. What were some of the trainings that you took, though, right, to help prepare you for that, for yourself?
Right. Well, we just did the normal foster care training when we went through to get our licensure, and honestly, the trauma that I experienced as a child is God healed me so much when I became a Christian that my childhood seems surreal. Like, it doesn't even seem like a real life experience, which is really maybe not everybody's experience. But for me, there was just so much healing and coming to know the love of God that it was transformative to, like, immediately my heart is to, like, who else can I help? Because I can identify, but I don't live there, if that makes sense. Like, I identify with trauma and abuse, but I don't live in those spaces. And I know how to not be there and to facilitate healing, because I know that God heals people. I know He loves children, and He, I don't know, I can go on about that, but I just
there's probably a lot of other people who have that same occurrence, right? They feel like, but they feel the other way. They're like, how do I do this? And like, I'm traumatized myself.
Right.
I've been through this, and how can I pour of me into a child? But you actually are doing it. So you're proof positive that hurting people actually help people, break the myth, right?
Right. And I think it's hard to do that outside of Jesus, honestly. Like, it's really hard to know that you can help other people when you've been traumatized outside of Christ, because He is our ultimate healer. But yes, you absolutely can. And I think that there's an amount of empathy that only people who have come from those circumstances can identify with, other kids that can speak into life. And like you said, it is a living example. Like, when I think about my testimony, I think, gosh, there's a lot of things that God's done that you wouldn't know. So, but
So I will, go ahead.
No,
go ahead.
I could keep, I guess, I'm not sure where we'll get on this spectrum, but I personally believe everybody should try and be a foster parent. If it's not for you, you'll figure that out later down the line, but you don't know until you try, is my personal opinion. Like, if you don't ever try, you'll never know, but you have to try. I'm going to mute myself because I can
But
hear a
then
bunch
that
of
comes
noise.
in with, the Jones family,
Right.
because you have the different levels of foster care, right? You have those different levels. So Sherman and San Pinguita, you guys actually take in, is it older kids, or what age group is that that you prioritize, or is it any?
So actually my name, I'll correct, it's actually Sampaguita. So, but right now with my
Gita, thank you.
Sampaguita. So we prioritize the mentorship of what we do with those who are transitioning out of care. So those teenagers all the way up to, I'd say 30 years old, we've poured into, been a part of getting them to independence, whether it was through my professional workforce development piece, or just through the daily life skills mentorship, be there to talk to, pray with individuals, but also with safe families. And I will echo the other co-hosts on here when I say, I didn't think I had the emotional capacity to ever foster. Emotional, physical, like everything that it came with. So what we did is we started out in safe families, because safe families was more of a temporary placement before the children go into foster care, or before CPS is called. So in the case of a family where the mother, she was a single mom, had 4 kids, and was going in for I think it was a bypass surgery or something. And she needed to go to rehab for 2.5, 3 weeks, and needed somebody to take care of her children. She had no family to take care of the kids. So our friends had gotten the call, and that's when we first found out about Safe Families, was that she was only going to have the children for 3 weeks. We saw them at church. So we asked her more questions about it. So that was an example of I was like, of when it really hit me we can do it temporarily. On a different note too, because there's no separation between, other than the physical, between the parent and the children. And the reunification was happening. There was a set date. Typically there's a set date. In our case, there was not, and we gained legal guardianship of the young boy that we have now.
Wow, awesome. Did you want to add to that, Sherman?
No, it's not really any more to cover. That was pretty thorough. So no, I don't have anything else. Good job, guys.
Thanks.
Okay, so I have a question from the audience, you guys. So we've talked a lot about the process, maybe not a whole lot. We can go back to that, right? But what are some of the challenges that come along with children? You could talk about challenges on your end or their behalf, right? When they come into your home, what are some of the challenges that they face? And possibly a highlight on how you deal with it. Anybody can go.
I'll go. It is challenging. I think the first part is how emotional it is to have a little child come into your home and know that they're separated from their parents or their grandparents. That, and just an initial knowing that is already not God's plan for anybody, is to be an orphan. So initially just the emotion. And almost every single child that came into our home never cried. They never asked for a mom or a dad. We had one child that did, who was reunified really quickly. And I was like, this kid should not be here. He clearly has people who love him and care for him. And he cried the whole time we had him. Most of the other children really did not cry and never asked for a parent. And so that in itself is also sad and identifying, but they come with behavioral issues. They come with things that you're not sure how to deal with or equip. So that's where your support people come in. That's really important. Add multiple, just even friends and family, but this foster care system who would say, I see a difference in that child from when they, when they're in your home, and just that small encouragement that you're doing something that makes a difference in their life when you feel like everything's out of control, because you do feel like that sometimes. It's emotionally draining to learn how to take care of a child that has behaviors or you've never experienced before. I had a child that just constantly bit you every time, like bruises up and down my other kids' arms, and you have to still love that child, and you still have to show that child affection, even though when they're gonna they just didn't know how to receive it. I don't really have a whole lot, but there is difficulty, but you persevere because the child is worth it. The relationship with their parent is worth it to try and and also we as a family, I'm not sure what happens here, but we as a family always chose to interact directly with the birth parents as much as possible. So we always had, we were the people who always took the kids to their visits with their parents. We tried to make as much contact with the parents as we could, so that we could build relationship too. So when transition happened, we would know that there was, they had somebody to contact if they needed help with their child again. So there is a lot of challenges, but you just innately know that it's worth it. That it doesn't. That it's not about you. It's about this is a world we live in, and our responsibility is to be these kids' advocate and the parents' advocate too when they don't know how to advocate for themselves.
I like that. I like that you brought in the advocacy piece, because that's what you are. You are like a lifelong advocate for this child moving forward. Mm-hmm. And now you have to move mountains sometimes to make sure that they're safe, that they no longer experience some of the things they experienced that got them into foster care. So with that being said, you said something about support systems made up, right? Mm-hmm. And that was one of our questions. Like, what are some of the support systems that you have made up with family, friends, whoever it may be? I know mine was my mom all the time. Anytime I took a foster child in, I always talked to my mom. Like, hey, sometime I'm gonna need some respite care, right? So what are some that you guys have made up, or even Bethany, I would like for you, after maybe one of them answer, if you could talk about supports that the Bethany Christian Services offered for foster parents. So
I would also like to chime in on the last question, because I want to clear that our children who come into care are not bad children, because we talk about challenging behaviors that they're going to have, and yes, they are going to have challenging behaviors, but these are children who horrible things have happened to them, and it's due to trauma. These children have been traumatized, and so at Bethany, we offer a training called Trauma-Informed Parenting to train our foster parents on how to get underneath the behaviors of the children, how to properly respond to their behaviors. That is so important, because you need a new parenting strategy to parent foster kids, because just normal parenting, the way you would parent your child who's not been traumatized, is not going to work with a foster child. And so initially parents don't understand that. You think, okay, I can just love this child and provide a stable, nurturing environment for this child, and everything is going to miraculously be okay. But it doesn't work that way. So we have to understand the impact that trauma has on the brain development of the children, and the reason the children behave the way they do, the reason they respond the way they do, is because of the trauma that they have been exposed to, many of them for years. And so once you have the training and you begin to implement the principles and things that you're taught through trauma-informed parenting, you're being equipped on things that you can do with the children, it really makes a difference. And then, as was already stated, you can see the children heal. So our children are very resilient, foster children, even though they've been through so much. When they're in your home, and as I said, you providing a loving, nurturing, stable environment for that child, it takes a while. Like I said, it doesn't happen overnight, but you begin to see that child heal. And that's a beautiful thing. So I really want the audience to know that it is a tremendous ministry, very challenging ministry on many different levels. But again, most agencies that you're working with, and I know I can only speak for Bethany because that's who I work for, we offer the support, we offer the resources, we offer the training that you need to be the best foster parent that you can possibly be. And what you did mention about support system, we emphasize that so much, and that you have to have really solid support system to foster. So if that's your extended family, your immediate family, good friends, church family, that you can call on, that's going to support you to help with the different things that you have as a foster parent, because there are added responsibilities in there: weekly parenting time visits, weekly therapy visits. So if you got friends and family that come alongside you and will assist you, especially in transportation to these different meetings and things like that, that's a tremendous help. And then we talk about the importance of self-care, that as foster parents, you got to love on yourself and take time to do fun things just for you. So at least once a week, you got to get away. Okay. You got to have a night out, a day away, or whatever, where you're just taking care of you. And again, that's where that support system comes in. And I always encourage my families to become a part of a support group, a foster care or adoption support group, because it's there that you're going to be with people who understand what you're going through. Because even as much as your family might love you and what you're doing, they still might not understand. They see some of the behaviors of the kids and they're like, why aren't you doing such and such? And they don't understand. Okay, I can't do that. That's
right, but that's really with every kid, though, right? I mean, because our own kids aren't perfect, right? So we got to take it to. There's some things that just come with age, right? It just
and experience.
The teenagers just gonna do certain.
Even
because that's where
I think we just
the support group comes in.
Take out the thought that we're gonna have perfect kids in our house, right? So what did you say? What did you say, Hannah? What did you say, Hannah?
Something about the support system, because we have two of our support pillars on this call, which are Sherman and Sampagita and Lindsay and her husband Miles. So when Stephen and I got into it, knowing that we're both working so many hours, we really said this needs to be like a team effort. This can't just be us. And we wanted to make sure that we had enough people that it wouldn't fall too heavily on like one couple to be like that fallback couple for us, but we could kind of reach out to. So we actually got 5 different couples set up as substitute care providers for us, and really seeing them not just as people who could help in sort of logistical times of need, but also as emotional support, also as spiritual support, praying with us, also as just a team that we could go to with questions or for advice, and really do it together and see it as a team effort, as a community effort. And I would strongly encourage those who are interested in foster care, but maybe not ready to do a longer term placement yet, see who you could be a substitute care provider for. And that's an awesome opportunity to build a relationship with a kid, to get maybe a weekend or a sleepover overnight experience with a foster kid, to emotionally and spiritually partner with existing foster parents to understand what that experience is like. I think that's a fantastic way to get a sense for it that is a smaller time commitment than taking a long-term placement. I'll just say one thing about your previous question around the challenges. I think some of it is really redefining and reframing your own expectations rather than the challenge of the kid. Because if you go into it and you're expecting to get kind of your emotional high out of the kid reacting a certain way, you're going to burn out on that really fast. But if you can really ground why you're doing this in those deeper reasons of, I value this child's life, I love this kid, this is what God has called me to do, that's going to give you that stamina to go the long haul. And then I would say, like, one thing that we've really learned is, like, have patience and give it time, because in the moment you could think, man, this is never going to change. I mean, there were things where we were like, we've tried so many different tactics and strategies and it's not changing. Like showers for us, like showers were something where, she just didn't want to take her shower, and it would be like an hour-long saga of like, here's why we need to take showers, and then crying and all this stuff. And we really like invested in prayer about it, and then overnight it was boom, it just changed. All of a sudden she's taking her showers. I just say, okay, time to take your shower. She takes her shower. So I'd say just like be patient and don't forget the power of prayer and the Holy Spirit, because God is the only one who can really do that heart work. Like, we're just here as his servants, and it can be easy to try a lot of strategies and parenting tactics and all these things, but ultimately the Holy Spirit's the one who's going to get that done and work in their heart and do the healing that is actually the underlying issue. That all these things we see are just symptoms of the trauma. It's not the actual issue. The underlying issue is probably something else that you don't even see or understand because you haven't seen their whole life. So I think for us, that giving things time, and then now being able to really see those fruits 6 months later of, wow, this kid is so resilient. She's so teachable. She's gone through so much transformation. Like, I couldn't have gone through this much emotional transformation in 6 months, is like so inspiring, so humbling. Like, we just have so much like awe for her. But if you'd asked us like 1 month in, we would have been like, are these patterns ever going to change? We don't know. So I'd say, like, don't lose hope. Like, pray about it and just wait and see and watch, and you will be amazed by how God works in their lives.
Yeah, and that's awesome. I just want to add something really quick. Just thinking about some of the challenges.
Right. And some of it literally, like, because this morning I had a 2-year-old that I had a fight with about a shower. Here, you're on mute.
Okay. I was just saying, some of the challenges that we kind of went through is more, I kind of mentioned, is really more on our end about the heart change in us. And then the biggest part was really about just understanding like God's grace for us and how much we have to reflect that onto the our little one that we care for. Like, that's like the biggest thing that we had to do. And there's a lot of stuff too that we had to figure out how to, like, different ways to teach him things, and how to figure out really just how his brain works and how is it best suited. And again, I think Ms. Miller mentioned it, like he's not going to learn the same way because of the trauma. So we have to figure out ways for him to learn and to understand certain things and what to do, in his own, life and his own brain and things like that. And on the support end, really it's just been, again, our church family, which has been awesome, and helping him and just socially and other ways too. The social part is really like his best part, his funnest part. But anyway, that, and then also just our family as well, just helping out when they're able to. But it's we're hoping that I guess just hoping that people don't shy away from the opportunity to care for a kid. So, but yeah, that's it.
Yeah. So I will back to you, Sherman and Sam Benquita. are there any therapies that you've used? So you guys seem like the ones who've had more kids in and out of the home because you do more pop-up care, right? Are there any therapies that you guys know of that help children in the midst of these transitions?
Yeah, so the individuals that come to our home are those whose cases are closing, or we are emergency placement until they do find, let's say, housing or a placement for them. So, but we do have a little bit of experience in that. So we have a group of licensed therapists who work with foster youth and those with PTSD and trauma from childhood. So we utilize them as far as therapy. As far as like in-home, to be honest with you, it changes per child, you know. But I will tell you, our little one loves music and loves to dance. So when we have sad days or difficult times listening, we just take a break with music and dancing.
Cool, cool, cool. So what about any family, like things the kids bring with them, that behaviors that they've learned in the other family households? It could be another foster home, because some of the kids didn't come just straight from, you know, how their family, they came from another foster home. Anybody had any challenges, and how did you deal with those? Like any challenging behaviors that you saw, like, hey, we don't do this, we don't need to do this, and how did you deal with it?
Yeah,
Anybody?
I'll go because I could think of something real quick. With a lot of older youth, hoarding food is something that was big. And I would find things that don't belong in homes in the house and wonder where it's coming from. But it was because food was either scarce or taken or whatever the case may be previously. So there was food being hoarded. And so what we did is just, again, have the conversation. You know, you don't have to go this far, but I would actually make like spreads of just like fruit on the table and just leave stuff out. Just like, this is everybody can eat this. You don't have to ask when you're hungry. Everything that's on this buffet here is good. Just eat whatever you want. So that's one of the things that we implemented, was just making sure they feel like they're at home. Even if they don't live here, we still want them to feel like this is somewhere that they can call home. We want them to feel like we are family. This is what family does, whether or not we're biologically related. This is what the Jones family does when you're here, and you will feel like family when you're here.
Yeah. Anybody else? Any other behaviors? I like to, I guess, talk about a little bit. One of my nieces, she had house hopped so much as a teen that everywhere she went, like, she really only prepared, like, she was good with like a couple of outfits. She kept her duffel bag with her going to school. She kept like stuff with her, like she was going to run away. And it had me scared. Like, are you going to run away? What are you doing? What are you doing? But it was just, she had been put out of so many places that she was just prepped all the time. Like, I've lost so much. And then her concern about things was like, oh, I don't care about that, because if it get left behind, it's left behind, right? Because she had been so many places. And it took a while for me to, you know, console her and get her to think, to understand, like, you're here, I got you, we got you, right? And I know you've probably seen that with a lot of the older teens also. And they're used to that, you know, and I wanted to prepare them. So when you leave my house, you're stable, one place for a while, go to school, this and that, and, you know, next place, right? So talking about prayer and cycles of defeat, we know that foster care, Stephen even said it, you know, it's a generational thing. How are we addressing the generational curses that come with this in prayer, in fasting, whatever? How are we incorporating this into this process, right? Anybody?
Well, I'll go first because I can't stop smiling. But actually, really, it's knowing what the generational curses actually mean. So we had to do our own due diligence because I grew up in the church, but a different kind of church, let's just say that. And I had no idea that generational curse was even a thing. Had no idea. So I would say if this is something like you've heard for the first time, don't be afraid. Because if you know the Bible, you've seen it in the Old Testament too. But we prayed it out of them. We pray before someone gets into our vehicle, after they left, same in our home. We pray over them. We ask them if we can pray over them, pray with them, pray for them. And we allow just the Holy Spirit to work in them by just being that example for them and showing them this is true. This is something that happens. This is something that, you know, has been carried with, you have been carrying unknowingly. And this is how we attack it. This is how we get rid of it. So.
So something to that prayer part, we have 4 biological children. And so anytime we got a call, we would ask all of our children to pray, and we all had to be in unity. If one child was uncomfortable and didn't feel like they felt like God was saying yes, then we never took a child. That actually never happened. They took every single child that came, but we always as a family would get together and pray every single time whenever we got a phone call. And like I said, you know, we've had dozens of kids come through, and our kids always accepted that challenge, whether it was for, you know, years or a couple days. And then of course, you can't help but pray. You really don't have any options because what else are you gonna do? But yeah. And leaning into the Holy Spirit, because He will give certain directions to each child, because each child's unique, and there's certain things that you can specifically pray into a child's life or a parent's life that you see. Sometimes you can see that generational curse from their parent. You can look at their parent and say, oh, I see exactly where this kid's getting this from. And, you know, it's no fault of the parents to the degree, you know what I mean? So yeah, you really just have to be in tune to, you know, looking at each child and situation and asking God how you want him to, how you should pray for that family specifically.
I like to go into, so we were talking about the prayer side, but Bethany and Sam and Guida, when she comes back, what are some programs that you can help foster kids to break that cycle themselves, right? Like financial stability, how do they become stable? Because I think again about my mom. Her mom was a foster kid. She was a foster child. My brother was. My nieces ended up being that, right? And me as an aunt, I took them in, but there was still some things, some supports I needed from Orchard Children, like to help me like get them stable in life, to make sure, and they have children now. And I'm constantly like, hey, you know, these children are the priority right now. We gonna keep them focused so we don't cause the same cycle over and over again. So what are some supports that Bethany Children's Services may have there? Financial literacy, anything?
We don't, right now, we're just beginning to establish an independent living program, which will be dealing more with the teenagers. So right now we work primarily with the 0 to say maybe 14 or so. And then we did have a program, I think we still have the program where we are working with teens. We go into the residential facilities and we help the young people with life skills and things like that. And that's a separate program that Bethany has. But most of our children who are in individual family homes are younger, and the families work with those children, helping them with whatever skills, you know, they need in school, you know, as well as the personal life skills and things. So, and we support our families in that way. But we don't have a specific, like, and we also do try to link our children up with mentors, but that's also, it's an outside resource. So if you feel your child could really benefit from having a mentor, then you work with your case manager to get a for that child. And that helps to provide additional support for the children.
Hey, Missy, I know there's sometimes confusion around what's available to foster families. Like, does someone need to own their own home? Do people need to be married? Do you have to be financially well off? Like, what kinds of requirements are there for someone to become licensed to foster?
Okay, I'm so glad you asked that, because so many of those are myths that you just mentioned. One is, to be a foster parent, you can be married or single. You know, that's fine. Either way, you can have children or not have children. You do not have to own your own home. You could be renting, you could be in a condo, an apartment, a mobile home. And your income doesn't really matter as long as you have stable income, as long as you're able to pay your bills. So there isn't a certain level of income you have to foster. We don't check your credit score or anything like that. We have individuals who are on disability. We have individuals who are retired and on a pension. As I said, we've had single parents who are fostering. So it's just a matter of if your income is stable, where you're able to enjoy life and have some money left over at the end of the month. You know, that's pretty much it. So it's pretty open, I think, to most people. Have a heart to open your home and your heart to a child, we'll work with you so that you can become a licensed foster parent. You just cannot be on the child abuse registry or the child abuse registry or the sexual abuse registry. Those two you cannot be on to foster. But we do have parents, we have foster parents who have been convicted of certain felonies or misdemeanors. We work with them on that, you know, as long as it's not like homicide, something like that. We just need to get the police report and you've done your probation, you paid your fine or what have you, your case is closed. And so there's no problem. We have to send your police report up with your home study that goes up to Lansing, because the license is issued from the state of Michigan. So that information is sent up with your application and everything to be licensed.
So can you talk us one moment through the process? I'm a person who wants to do foster care. Right now, this show has made me say, okay, I'm good. What do they do next?
The first step would be to contact an agency, find out when they have orientation, and you go to an orientation. Orientation is the first step to being licensed, but you don't have to be licensed just because you go to an orientation. But the orientation is like the information meeting that explains what fostering is all about, what the qualifications are, what the licensing process is. So you attend an orientation. With Bethany, once you attend the orientation, you let us know if you want to proceed with licensing. If you do, then we send you the application packet. You fill that out and send it in. We'll then send you an email regarding getting your fingerprints done, because everyone who's going to become a foster parent has to get their fingerprints done, irregardless of if you're a police officer, child care provider, or you already had them done. You still have to get your fingerprints done with us. It doesn't cost you anything, but everyone has to get fingerprints done. Once your fingerprints are done, that's sent up to Lansing. You'll be assigned a licensing worker with us. A licensing worker will begin the home study process, where she'll come out to your home. And I think now, like with COVID-19, we were trying to do virtual home studies, but now I think the worker can come out to your home, assessing for safety, you know, issues and things like that. Interviewing every family member. So if you have adult children who are maybe away at school or have their own families, they will still be interviewed, you know, probably via the phone or what have you. Every household member living in that home will be interviewed. The worker will write up a home study. It's very I'm going to say kind of invasive, asking a whole bunch of questions to really get a good picture.
It's creating a safe space for the child. It's creating a safe space for the child. That's all it is. Right?
So definitely want to get to know the family members, all of that. So then the worker will then write up the home study. You have everyone in the home has to get a physical examination. They'll get a financial report just saying, okay, about the brief. So they just brief financial report, you know, of your bills. You turn in like 3 current pay stubs, that kind of thing. And so other than that, that's really, I don't want to say that's pretty much it, because it can be a lot, but it takes about 4 to 6 months to get licensed, because you're waiting for things to come back from the state. But so all of that information is compiled into what we call the home study, and the home study is sent up to Lansing with your application. And like I said, any other information that's needed will go up with that home study. And then they receive that. It's taking about 2 to 3 weeks now to get the report back that this family is licensed. And if they have any questions about anything, the licensing department, they'll email the licensing worker and work that through. But we're really very thorough. And so if we send your home study up to Lansing, more than likely, you're definitely going to get licensed. Because if there are any issues, we're going to assess them and deal with them before we send the report up to Lansing. So that's
so can I ask a little bit about, if you don't mind, Lindsay, the family support. So family care, kinship fostering. Mm-hmm. So I'm an aunt who wants to get my niece or nephew. It's urgent that I get them. I don't have 4 to 6 months. Mm-hmm. How does that work? Like in a brief.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, with kinship care, if you are a relative,
brief synopsis, how does that work? Right. Because I know that's not the same 4 to 6 month plan.
Right. If you are a relative, the child can come and live with you while they're getting licensed. So you don't have to wait for them to come into your home. So there'll be a quick assessment done of you, police clearance, all of that run, and fingerprints, but it's pretty much just the police clearance and everything run. To make sure that you are appropriate. And once we get that back, the children can come in and be with you while you're getting licensed. So you don't have to wait the 4 to 6 months for your niece or nephew, grandchild to come and be in your home while you're waiting to get licensed. So that's how that's taken care of.
Right, as long as that parent or those parents don't live in that home with you, right?
Correct. And once the children, when they come into care, even though you're a relative, the same boundaries and requirements exist, you know. So a treatment plan will be done for, let's say it's the birth parents or what have you. Treatment plan is done. They have to abide by that treatment plan. They would only be able to see the children when they come to a parenting time visit. They can't just come over your house and visit the child anytime they want, because the children aren't come into care because there was some issue that was going on that the state felt it wasn't safe for the children to be with that birth parent. So they can't just come over and visit whenever they want. And these are issues that the relative caregiver and the birth parents, we really have to stress and make sure everyone understands, because that could be very difficult. You know, if I'm a grandmother and I have my daughter's children, my daughter's probably going to feel like she can come over whenever. And we have to make it clear that's not acceptable. And you're jeopardizing the reunification back with your children if you're doing those things. So you have to abide by the treatment plan.
Okay.
So I don't know if this is true in Michigan, but in Idaho, whenever a child was placed in foster care, they immediately started looking for relatives to place the child with first. Is that true here as well?
Yeah, so, we look for relatives first. So before we place a child in an unrelated foster home, we're trying to place them with a relative first. And if we can't find a willing or appropriate relative, then we'll look to place them in an unrelated foster home. Because we
And,
hate to move children. So we hate to place a child in your home and then a relative steps forward and 2 weeks later or 2 months later, we have to move the child. We don't want to do that. So we really try to locate the relatives first. And then if that can't happen, then we'll put them into your home.
Yeah. And I think the reason why I asked that question, because I know in a lot of communities, when people are dealing with challenges themselves, they won't open their homes when the foster care services call them, because they feel like, hey, how do I do this? Like, I don't want to go through all of this. Or they see it as a more burden on them, when it could be easier through the foster care system, you know, for a relative to get the child. So with that, the last two questions I have is, what are some ways that people have supported you through this process? And what are some ways you wish people would have supported you through the process for those who are foster parents? Anything you would tell somebody, like, when I first got in this, I would have loved, like me, literally, I would have loved for somebody to tell me that my niece thought she was grown and could have just, could just do what she wanted to do, because people had told her in the other homes that she could just do what she wanted to do. And I was like, no, we still got, you 16, we still got a little bit of boundaries here, right? So what are some things you wish people had told you?
Well, again, from the my perspective, being I've been a licensing worker, I've been a foster care case manager, and now doing recruitment and a foster adoptive parent myself, I really want to stress the importance of training. That is so important, especially the trauma-informed parenting, because it makes all of the difference to understand how trauma affects the brain development of a child, which also then affects the child's behavior. And as I stated in the beginning, these children aren't bad. These are children who bad things have happened to, and they respond a certain way because of the trauma. But if you've never really been exposed to that or have the training, you're not going to even think about that. And it makes such a big difference. And that's the one thing I wish I had when I was fostering. There was no trauma-informed parenting at that time. And so I really encourage, and at Bethany now, we make it mandatory that when you're being licensed, trauma-informed parenting, the first 4 modules, we require that before you can get licensed, because we know how important it is and the difference it will make in you working with the children, and how it's just going to help your life as well as the children. So we're making it's mandatory now.
Cool. Anybody else?
Another thing, we brought several newborns home from the hospital, and you think doing all the attachment parenting, all those good things, and I realized later on that those newborn infants have just as much trauma as some other children. And also, so when you think if you're getting a newborn that they're going to be trouble-free, that's not always true. They do come with a lot of trauma that develops later in life too. And you just don't think that when you have this cute little baby at home, that they are going to have a lot of issues later, or can have, not always. And so you probably still need that trauma parenting class. And then the other thing that I mean, for me, I think our the CASA worker, we always had CASA workers. They were a huge encouragement for us always. And my daughter's going on a date.
Oh, you look so happy.
He's a nice boy, I think. Hey, Trayvon.
Who's that?
Lucy and Trayvon. Hey.
Tell him to show his face. The world is watching.
Oh, wait. Oh, gosh. Sorry, Trayvon. The world is watching. We're live something. Okay, now I got to get off now. Sorry.
Okay. I have another question. This probably is for Missy and Kristen. I know one of the tensions in in this process of like foster and adoption is the tension between families' desire to adopt and the primary goal of reunification. And sometimes those desires tend to compete with each other. Can you guys just speak to that a little bit, like what your personal process has been like, how you've navigated that?
So when we first started fostering, we only said we were going to only ever foster. We were never going to adopt. Even if a child came up for adoption, we weren't going to adopt. We just wanted to be a foster family. And we did have a little guy for 2 years who ended up coming up for adoption, who we did not adopt. And then somewhere along the process, it just happened. But we always had a plan of reunification for each of our children. And the 2 that we adopted in Idaho, one of the birth moms just straight up asked me, would you adopt this child? And even though that doesn't really work in foster care like that, you still have to go through all the appropriate channels. She really wanted me, and we still have an open relationship. Like I still am in contact with this birth mom. So I would say never go into foster care thinking don't make that your dream to adopt a child from foster care. I don't think because that is not the point of foster care. The point of foster care is to reunify that child back to their family and to advocate for that wholeheartedly. And then our last little guy, he was abandoned at the hospital. So there was kind of like no options at that point. It was just, it was a lot easier. Honestly, but I love to see good reunifications, even in ones that you're like a little sketchy on. Like we had a little girl that we loved and we would have wanted to keep so bad. And we thought she had to go home sooner than she should have, but ultimately that is the best thing. And you kind of just have to get over it and realize God always has to remind me, like the time you spent with that child is not wasted. The love that you give that child is doing something to that child. You are forming attachment, neurological things in their brain. They know consistency. They know that somebody's always going to be there and attend to them. Those are things that, do pathways and do things and make a difference. I don't know all the technical terms, but I know it's true.
Planted a seed, most definitely planted a seed, right? You planted a seed that's going to be embedded in their lives forever, right? Because they're going to remember it. Anybody else had anything on that question?
Just like Kristen, in my family, my children were 7, 4, and 1. Like I said, when we started fostering, they made it clear they didn't want anybody older than them. So that meant we only took in newborns. And I'm so glad it was stated that newborns come with in utero trauma. So there are issues that you have to deal with the children, even though they're newborn babies. We picked all of our children up from the hospital, but still there was trauma that they suffered in utero, issues that you have to deal with. And so I'm just so happy that was said. I'm sorry, I forgot the question now.
I was just asking about the tension when you a desire to adopt, but the primary goal is reunification. Right.
And it is very important as a foster parent that you do remember that the goal is always reunification. But this is a very sad statistic, but it's true in that over half of the children that come into foster care, the parents' parental rights are going to be terminated and those children will come up for adoption. So if you foster for any length of time, more than likely you're going to have the option to adopt a child, because the way the system works is that if you're fostering a child and the parents' parental rights have been terminated, as the foster parent, you have the first option to adopt the child. And so, and because children coming into care are usually coming in due to the parent's substance use. And unfortunately, many of our parents have been struggling with substance use for over a decade, just for years. And it's very hard to overcome that and get your life stable and able to provide a safe situation, stable situation for a child in about a year or so. So unfortunately, and the other big issue is mental illness. A lot of our children are coming into care due to the parents being mentally ill. And even though the parents truly love their children, they are just not able to parent the children. And so with that being said, that's why the statistic is so high for parents, their parental rights being terminated, because we don't want children growing up in foster care anymore. That used to happen years ago. And we realize that's not in the child's best interest. It's much better for a child to have permanency as soon as possible. So the state kind of has it set up where after a year and a half, if the parents are not making progress, the birth parents are not making progress, then the judge is going to say we need to submit a petition to terminate parental rights. And that's so that this child can know that they have a family, that they have stability. And that's just that's just the way that it works. And for a while I struggled with that, but because ideally it would be best for every child to go back and be with their birth parent, to be reunited with birth parents. But if the parents are still struggling with the issues that brought the children into care, you can't send them back into that situation. And if they bonded with their foster family and it's a good situation, and the foster family, yes, you know, we tell all of our families, if you're going to foster, like I said, there's a good chance they ask you about adopting a child, and are you open to that? And so, as you said, Lindsay, a lot of families come into fostering with the desire to adopt. And so we tell them, if you're patient, because we can't promise anything, there are no guarantees when you take a placement, but if you foster for any length of time, chances are you're going to be able to adopt. And like Christian said, whatever time you have with a child is not wasted. That child has been blessed. That child, we have foster kids come back to us now who are adults, and they tell us what a difference it made in their lives, even though they were only with this foster family for, say, a year, and then they went back home or whatever. They talk about the tremendous impact that being in that home had in their lives. And especially for many of our children, they've never been to church before. They've never been exposed to Sunday school, junior church, youth group, right, all of that. And many of our children come back and tell us that really made a tremendous difference in their lives because they came to know Jesus. And coming to know Jesus means their life was not only healed here, you know, in this side, but also for eternity. And so as a believer, I think it was said, like, there's no greater ministry to me than being able to bless the life of a child in that way. It's just, it's awesome.
So thinking about that though, that you're creating safe families by just inviting them into your home, right? And so I did want to touch back bases really quick on safe families with Sam Pinguida. Really quick, because Lindsay has some follow-up, some closing remarks that she wanted to make. But how does a person become a safe family? There's a person out there, there's people out there who's like, look, I'm not in it for the long haul. I just want to do this respite care, right? How do they sign up? What's the qualifications, and how can we get them on board like ASAP?
Yeah, so it's safe-families.org is the website. Or you could just Google search Safe Families, you will find it. The process is absolutely the same as Bethany's, as fostering. So you do have to go through the training, you still have to do all of that. Nothing is different as far as screening or anything. So it's all the same as you would if you were fostering. The process, you don't immediately get placed to, and just so everyone does know, Safe Families is relatively new here in Michigan. So there's a huge need for it. So if you are interested, I would say just get started with the process. Because
describe a safe family for me really quick.
I have to jump in here too. I'm sorry. I work with Sheila Mounts, who's the Safe Families Coordinator here in the Metro Detroit area. And it is very easy to be, you don't have to be licensed to be a Safe Families home. So Sheila you would contact Sheila. She would come out to your home and do a brief home study, get you approved, and you can be a safe family. So you don't have to go through there is online training that you do to be a safe family's home, but you don't have to do all of the other outside training that you would do to become a foster family. And as we said, you don't have to be licensed.
Families can run from what to what, like you have a child for 2 weeks to a month, or just in transition. What are they doing?
It could be 2 days. A safe family placement, it just depends on the situation. The average safe family placement in our area is maybe around 45 days. That's kind of like the longest almost. But safe family placements can be, pretty short.
And you can choose and pick when you want to be a safe family, right? Once you have that certification, right?
Yeah, it's the same. You would be called and asked, they would describe the situation to you, what's going on, and if you want to accept this placement. And if you do, then that's wonderful. Sheila works it out. She comes over with the paperwork. So you sign the paperwork, the birth parent signs the paperwork. And a lot of times it has to do with, if a mom has to have an emergency surgery or something. And so Sheila meets them at the hospital, and you meet the safe family will meet them at the hospital. They do the paperwork. So the children don't have to come into foster care. They can just go into a safe family's home. I
would imagine
I want to just distinguish the difference between foster care and safe families. So correct me if I'm wrong here, but the primary distinction is with safe families, the placement is voluntary. So the biological parent is saying, hey, I need help. I don't want to get caught up in the system. I recognize I'm in a season of my life where I need extra help, support. And safe families is providing that support apart from the courts.
Correct.
And it's like a voluntary respite care, right?
Yeah, foster care, the children have been removed by CPS. I know some situations, we have friends, one situation was a mom, she was trying to get her own place and needed to work extra hours to be able to save up to get a deposit. And so she needed a month to kind of like work overtime. Or another situation when I was in Kansas City, we had kids that we were trying to get placed with safe families that the mom needed to do a 30-day drug program, and she hadn't lost her kids to foster care yet. And if she could do this program, maybe she wouldn't, so it's a parent saying, I recognize I need help, and it's voluntary.
Yeah. The big difference is the children coming into a safe family placement have not been abused or neglected. So if there's any of that, they have to come into state foster care. They cannot go into a safe family's home. So for safe families, you're getting children, like you said, where normally it's a single mom and she just needs help for a little bit of time to deal with whatever it is, and then the children go right back home to the birth mom. They keep in touch with her while they're in the safe family placement. They visit each other. They can go to church with the safe families home. All of that.
Almost like a vacation to auntie's house, right?
Yeah. It's very different.
Got a new auntie and uncle.
Very different from foster care. In that sense, and it, like Lindsay said, is volunteer. So there's no adversarial situation going on between the birth parent and the safe families, because the birth mom has agreed to place her children voluntarily with this family while she resolves whatever the issue was, and then the children go right back home to mom. And I do want to say there's a tremendous need for safe families in the Detroit area. Bethany right now is pursuing a grant to expand safe families to Detroit, because most of our safe families homes are in the suburbs, which is fine, but a lot of our cases are from Detroit. And so really would love some Detroit homes. So again, from this broadcast, if there are families who are thinking about it, please give a call. I'm going to give Lindsay Sheila's number, and you can just call Sheila and she'll get that home study going right away.
Great, thank you. So with that being said, everybody, I'd love to turn it over to Lindsay. Thank you for being a part of this. And Lindsay has some closing remarks that she wants to say. And thank you.
Yeah, so we just wanted to make it really clear, even if you are in a position, if you're not in a position to take a child into your home right away, that there's still a lot of opportunities to support and to be involved in helping tackle the orphan care crisis. And so some of the ways that were already mentioned is coming around as a support system to families who are able to make that commitment right now. I know with Hannah and Stephen, we're taking their foster child 1 or 2 days a week, or driving her to family visits, just pitching in however we could. And so that's a really tangible way that you can help. There's 2 other really tangible ways I want to draw attention to right now. One of them, Kristen mentioned earlier, CASA. CASA stands for Court Appointed Special Advocate. And I dropped the phone number and the email address for the CASA director in the chat there. And CASA is, you go through a brief training. It's 2 Saturdays and 1 Tuesday evening. It takes about 8 to 10 hours a month. And you become an advocate for a foster child. And they have seen really incredible success. The training that you go through kind of teaches you how to go to court and advocate for a child's best interests. And the average time that a neglect or abuse case remains in the system is actually reduced by 1 year when a CASA advocate is involved. So it really is a powerful way that you can be involved in advocating for a child. At this point, there's only about 50 in Detroit. And we know there's over like 3,000 foster cases. So huge need for more CASA advocates as well. So that's one tangible way. Another tangible way that you can support a foster child without necessarily having them under your roof, and is something that we're going to be drawing more attention to in the coming month. And this next month, actually 1 month from today, July 23rd, same time, same YouTube channel, we're going to have another panel discussion on how you can actually support our young people who are aging out of foster care. And the list is super long of all the ways that you can come around a young person. I'm not going to get into it now. I'll just give you a little bait and hook and hopefully reel you in for the next session that we'll do about that. But we have quite a few of these young people that have been coming around our church, and I'm sure the other churches that are represented out there. And really, this is something that anyone can do. Make a little time and a little space in your life. Something I think about is like, who drove you to get your driver's license? Who drove you to your first campus tour of college? Like, who talked you through your first breakup? You think about the kinds of ways that parents or aunts or uncles or other people in your life supported you as 18, 19, 20 years old. Like, where were you? You still were like with your family for Thanksgiving or Christmas or holidays. So there's still lots of ways that we can welcome these young people into our families without necessarily having to put a roof over their heads. So there is an event for that on Facebook, and I'll try to drop it here in the comments. There was one last question someone just asked before we head out for the night. From our sister Chanel. She says, I appreciate all the love shown for women and their resilience. We're talking a lot about moms and women, yet there are single fathers and single men intersecting in this experience also, right? Can anyone speak to that?
Absolutely. Actually, I thought about that earlier. I can't remember, but I made a comment and I should have said it out loud. But there are a lot of single fathers out there, or fathers who don't.
I guess I would love to.
That their children are actually in foster care. I'm sure Ms. Parker Miller could talk a little bit about that too, but there are single fathers that are out there that do have the need for either safe families or there may be a CPS case that they just don't know about as well too, that their children may be a part of. So yes. Ms. Parker Miller, do you have anything to add with that?
No, just that we do have some fathers who are have the treatment plan and they're working to get reunited with their children. Some of my most successful cases have been with single dads, and that's wonderful, you know. But overwhelming majority is with single moms for the most part, and even with safe families, even though Sheila does do a lot of work with the single dads as well. But again, it's primarily the single moms. But the program is the same. The work, the training, all of that is the same, whether it's mom or dad, working to have those children reunited with their birth parent. If it's at all possible, that is the preferred outcome that we would like to see happen with the children.
Awesome. Well, we're at the end of our time here, and I want to thank you guys so much. Hi, buddy. We have a junior member who's joined the panel. He's a living proof of foster and adoption, that it can be a really beautiful thing. Thank you, Stephen and Hannah. I know Hannah had to run. They're expecting a baby in a couple of weeks, so she had to run off to a birthing class tonight. And yeah, super exciting. So thanks to Sherman and Sam and Bernita. Thank you, Misty, for joining us. Thanks, Kristen, for hanging in there. We really appreciate all of you, and not just your time tonight, but we appreciate the way that you're leading all of us in your day-to-day lives. You are living a lifestyle of justice and modeling for us what justice looks like. And we're so grateful for each of you. So here's to more kids in more families, more homes for more kids.
Amen. Amen.
Amen.
Yes,
All right,
yes,
guys.
yes.
Thank you, Lindsay. Thank you.
Bye. Good night.
Thanks, everybody.
Bless everybody. Good night.